G'day mates, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down all the drop spots for the NA East FNCS Grand Finals this weekend, where the pros going, who's contested, who's uncontested, and just any other major talking points, because there's some big ones. We have Zayt's team no longer dropping Salty, Sweaty, not even dropping Hydro Dam anymore. They're going an unnamed POI location to get uncontested, and they're still contested. So there's so much to go over. I've made a nice map. I'm going to link that in the description down below in case you want to check it out yourselves, but let's just jump straight into it. Just a reminder, guys, if you haven't already, please check that subscribe button. If you haven't subscribed, I would massively appreciate it. 41% of you guys aren't, which is totally fine, but if you haven't, just a cheeky reminder. A lot of these drop spots are pretty standard, and I'll probably start off with some of those first because nothing's really changed on them. We still have Centered Edgy Commandment going Misty. We still have Jack Acorn Slacks going Slurpee. We have Clicks Booger Bizzle going Sweaty. So a lot of them are the same. Teams have been going there for a very long time. Chap over at Steamy. I will talk a bit about these drop spots later and which ones I think have the biggest advantage, but I think it's good to start off talking about some of the new drop spots because those are ones you guys are going to be most curious about and you're not up to date on. Starting off with the biggest storyline, we have Zayt, Saf and Stretch no longer dropping Hydro Dam like they were, no longer dropping Salty or Sweaty like they have done in the past. They're now going for the big Fort Crumpet split, which we know was popularized by Reverse 2K, Deyy and Mero. It's a drop spot they were able to win the last FNCS from, so it's surprising to see Zayt of all players and teams going here, a team that's known for alphaing up the best drop spot on the map, you know, going down at the drop spot or winning FNCS, nothing in between, you know what I mean? Like the player for alphaing drops is now going to go a non-POI location and he's still contested. Like, I just don't understand how this always seems to happen to Zayt, Saf and Stretch. So they're now getting contested by Adams, Snatch and Bread. And again, they're a team I haven't really heard about. I don't want to throw shade at anyone. I don't want to flame anyone, but I genuinely do not know anything about this team. But the fact that they're contesting Zayt, Saf, and Stretch will make this a really important team to keep an eye on, because even if they're not the best, they might be, I don't know, contesting a drop split like this is going to massively affect Zayt's chances of winning FNCS. Because if you look at the drop split on the map, you've got Fort Crumpet with 7 chest spawns. You've got 1 nearby. You've got another 1 nearby. You've got 3 on the beach. You've then got 3 over at the John Wick house, and then you've got, you know, 3 or 4 around the area with the house with a whole bunch of pots in it. I don't actually know the name of it, but all in all, this is not a lot of chests. There's 16 chests in pretty much this entire area or around about that. They might be able to get some along the way on Holy Hedges, but it's a drop spot with not a lot of loot at all, and the only way it's going to work is if they can triple drop on the slurp truck, get the slurp truck, and then get the loot, because if they have to start eating into their shields from what they've got from the drops, they're gonna be absolutely screwed. The only reason why Reverse 2K's team did so well is because they had this drop uncontested for pretty much every game. It was in the last 2 games they started getting dropped on by another team. Someone started stealing their loot, and in those 2 games they were by far their worst performing games as far as points. Game 12, the game that it all came down to for Reverse 2K, Deyy and Mero last season, they got gifted an underwater llama outside Sweaty Sands. If they did not find that llama, there is a very good chance they wouldn't have won FNCS and Centered's team would have, which shows how shambles this drop is, even if someone takes one small chunk of it. They lost Fort Crumpet and the drop just became absolutely terrible. Not to mention, if you're now contested, you're going to be fighting, you're going to be eating through all your mats, you're going to be slowing down your rotations. It's just, if Zayt, Saf, and Stretch get contested at this drop, I can guarantee you, hands down, they're not even placing top 5 this FNCS. Speaking of the ex-FNCS champs, I think that's probably one of the next big locations to talk about, is the fact that Reverse 2K, Deyy and Mero now have uncontested dirty docks, with Mikey, Niddle and Clarity not qualifying. Super gut-wrenching. I've already talked about that. That does open up a massive opportunity for our FNCS champs to go back-to-back. I mean, we've seen Deyy, Mero and Reverse, like I said, do it from a shambles drop spot. We've seen them pretty much contested at Salty Towers almost all this season. When they went Hydro Dam in their qualifying week, they were uncontested, but it was a drop spot they didn't know that well. They didn't have that much time to practice. They didn't know the rotations, and they still came top 10. So seeing them go a drop spot that I'm sure they've studied, a drop spot that I think is the strongest, if not top 2 most strongest drop spots on the map, it is looking fantastic for them. Not to mention, in stacked Storm Surge lobbies, heal off is even more important. Dirty Docks has that option to get the fish to go for heal off. One of the biggest problems with it is its Storm Surge. It does have some pretty tough storm surge routes, because since it's on the coastline, it's on the edge of the map, but it's down the mountain at the very bottom. You pretty much have to rotate really smart to get up on top of those mountains to get out to then start getting your storm surge tag. So it's a risky drop if they don't play it well, but I'm sure they've done their research and we've seen how insanely strong it can be for teams like Anas's team over in EU. They managed to absolutely dominate out of here in stacked games, uncontested. So there's no reason why Reverse 2K's team can't. So that bumps them up on my list of people to look out for this FNCS even more. They're the ex-champs, they're looking good, but they now have one of the best, if not the best drops on the map, uncontested. There's not too many other drops on the map that are contested, but I'll go through those before I start giving my thoughts on some of the other teams that have a really, really good shot this FNCS with their drop spots. We do have our Bully's team. So Bully, Osman, Frist leaving Steamy Stacks, leaving Chap uncontested after all the drama, which I'll go into in a second. And now we have Dom's team, who's playing with Dusky and Azervo contesting each other at Coral Castle. Now, this is a drop spot that is not the greatest anymore. When Coral Castle first came out, it was a very, very solid drop on the map. I don't want to say one of the best, but it's one of the only drops on the map that actually had its chests removed. So when 50% chest spawn or 80 or whatever it is came in, I always talked about how Coral Castle got nerfed because it felt like it had even less chests. It turns out they did actually remove permanent chest spawns out of the main building at Coral Castle. So the main Coral Castle got nerfed. It had, I think, 3 or 4 chest spawns taken out, and then you add in a 50 or 80% chest spawn, and it's just not as strong as what it used to be, especially in a finals setting, because you're so far on the edge of the map. If you're contested on spawn and you've got a team that's dropping Shark and Lighthouse, which is Spegu's team above you, and you've also got Zayt's team nearby on the edge who will also look for surge tags, and you have to rotate through Clix's team and Sid's team at Ples, it's just, you can see what I'm going with this. It's not a great drop spot already. I feel like, honestly, on the map, the top northwest section is probably one of the most difficult spots to rotate out of, other than maybe the east section, which I'll talk about in a second. So seeing this team go head to head, I don't really know how it's going to go for either of them. I don't have incredibly high hopes. I'm really confused why Bully's team did leave Steamy Stacks to go to Coral Castle. Not saying contesting Steamy would have been a good idea, because we know that Chap does have interesting play styles when you contest them at drops. He would have made their FNCS Grand Finals an absolute nightmare. I can just guarantee that. So why they would go from that out of all places to go Coral Castle, though, I'm guessing they're convinced that Dom's team will leave and they'll get it uncontested. Otherwise, there's other drops on the map that I would say are easier to contest, that are worth more, or just drop spots on the map that don't have anyone at right now. The main drop I want to talk about for being uncontested right now is Camp Cod. I went in the Discord where everyone's talking about their drop spots maps. I was in the Elite FNCS Discord, and they just said no one wants to drop there because it's so terrible for Storm Surge. And I guess that's true. In ultra stacked lobbies like this, it's really hard to loot up Camp Cod, get everything you need, get the fish, and then rotate and still get Storm Surge tags, because you are literally on the edge of the map, down in a valley behind all the mountains. So there is currently no one at Camp Cod. But do I think contesting, like, let's say a drop spot like Coral Castle is smarter than getting uncontested Camp Cod? I don't know. With practice and a bunch of VOD reviewing and a bunch of theory crafting, you probably could come up with a strategy that utilizes Camp Cod better than contesting someone else in a 12-game finals. So I just wanted to point that out as probably the main drop on the map right now that has no one at it. There are a bunch of places on the map you'll notice that I don't have claimed by anyone. Like, let's take, for example, Mando's house. I'm sure one of the teams at Hunter's Haven or Weeping Woods will try to claim that, but I don't 100% know which one, and I don't want to call it to one team. But this is the main area on the map that has no one at it. The other main contested drops right now is Stealthy Stronghold and Salty Towers. Stealthy, you have Crumble's team dropping on Crack's team. Again, Stealthy Stronghold, not the most insane loot. I think as a one single trio drop spot uncontested, it is very solid. You get a good amount of chests. I believe you get around 30 chests roughly in there, and you also manage to get all the fishing holes as well with decent rotates, and it's a part of the map that during the start is pretty much unthird partyable or unsearch taggable. You're literally inside a giant dome dome where no one can shoot in. So it's got good material too. It has max of all materials for your teammates in the surrounding areas. So really good drop spot, but seeing it contested, I don't really know how that's going to go for Cracked or Crumble's team. The other big drop spot is Zuni, NPen, Aspect going up against Not Panda and Stowe's team at Salty Towers. Salty Towers, as I've talked about multiple times, I think it's one of the most overrated drop spots on the map. Yes, it has 2 slurp trucks. Yes, it's center map. Yes, it has a decent amount of chests, but I just genuinely don't like it. I don't know. There's not a single team that's done really well out of Salty Towers, and that's why you've seen so many big names drop there and leave it. NPen, Zuni's, and Aspect is the only team that's been going there for a really long time. And again, look at their qualifying games. They managed to qualify because they got a 20 elimination victory royale. If you count that one game out, their consistency out of Salty Towers was terrible. Zayt's team went Salty Towers. I know they got griefed in game number 6, but 5 games for a team like Zayt should be enough to qualify as well. They also weren't able to qualify out of Salty Towers. You had Deyy, Mero, and Reverse going Salty Towers. They also left. It seems like it looks like a good drop, but there is something that goes on here that makes pros just not have good performances there. So seeing it contested by Not Panda's team and Zuni's team, I don't know who's going to be able to come out on top there. I would probably give it to Zuni's, NPen, and Aspect for just genuine spawn fighting strength. But overall, again, it's a 12-game format. Any team that is contested for the majority or all of this tournament will not place top 5. I'm putting it down, hands down. If they're contested for 6 games or more, unless they have a freak performance, they're not making top 5. Sorry, there is one more drop on the map that is currently contested that I think is going to be insane. We have Voil's team going up against Gabe Tahi and Sprite at Catty corners, and we just saw how well Gabe Tahi and Sprite can play over the weekend when they get an uncontested drop and they pop off. They got uncontested Sweaty and they absolutely dominated their heat, but looks like they're going into a spawn fight at Catty corners where we've seen time and time again spawn fights break out. Usually it's between Colazo's teams, so I don't know. I'm excited to see it. Voil obviously now picking up Pendush and COD Genesis. COD Genesis, Qua, and Shades were the ones that were going time and time again into Catty corners against Colazo's team. So at least one of them has some really, really good spawn fighting practice here. You also have Clamps' team up at Weather Station, and that's what makes this fight so ugly. When you have 2 teams at Catty and 1 team at Weather Station, it ends up being a win for the Weather Station. They roll down every single time. They at least get Storm Surge tags, or quite often, more than not, they can come down and clean house, get all the kills, or at least wipe out the trio that's left, get all the loot, and rotate with it. So I don't think this is going to go fantastically for either of these teams. I highly, highly doubt we'll see them contest each other more than a few times before they maybe try to find a new drop, because both those teams, especially Gabe Tahi and Sprite, have huge potential if they can get a solid uncontested drop. I don't think they're going to throw their FNCS into doing the Catty corners drop, because it is just a giant who gets down first and then turns into this really long drawn out spawn fight where people box up around main building and just hide it out. So there's a lot of loot in this area. I mean, the Weather Station team is looking pretty solid. We know how good Snow Mando and getting the big chill is right now. Usually you can't get enough gold from being at the outpost to be able to, being at the Weather Station to be able to get the bounties, because you need to be in Catty corners to do that. So if anything, this is great for the rest of the lobby, because it means none of them are probably going to walk away with a big chill, because both teams in Catty are either going to eliminate each other or get eliminated by Weather Station, or be so shambles they won't have time to go get the big chill. The last drop spot that's heavily contested that's really going to change things up, which is the reason why Zayt's team left the Hydro Dam, is the fact that it's being contested by Predator and User's team. You have 2 teams going Hydro Dam, and as I've watched in most regions, NA West especially, when I watch REIT and EU as well, when this drop spot gets contested, it's terrible. It's the worst drop spot, or it's the drop spot that gets made the worst when it's contested. Every drop spot is worse when you're contested, but because Hydro Dam, you have this massive wide split where all the teammates have to drop in different areas, or they get to triple drop on the Slurp truck over towards Slurpee and then get their loot. If you're contested and everyone has to do this giant 50-50 at Hydro Dam, it's terrible. Not only does it slow down the entire loot path, you don't get to get the Slurp truck, you also are in this giant 50-50 of who gets gets down first and who gets the best guns. You don't get to spread out. You take south side of you take south side of Catty, I take north. You take east side of Misty, I take west, and then you have this really skillful fair fight. No, it's just a giant 50-50 onto the Hydro Dam. Who gets a decent gun, who gets some damage, and then who doesn't manage to die. And then you have no reboot van either. So if one of your teammates gets knocked, you have to late rotate into a POI that someone else is at to try and reboot. Everyone's going to be able to see you in the feed or know if you're fighting and know that you're doing this as well. So I don't have high hopes for either of these teams. I think the RPG is going to play next to no impact this FNCS Grand Finals if these two teams still keep going head to head. Other new drops worth mentioning, I think one that's super interesting is Pxlarized team getting the Kami split. I've talked about how strong the Kami split is. Everyone knows how strong it is, and it's being claimed by Pxlarized team now, which is a team that I think has massive potential, but we've only ever seen them contested at Pleasant Park, really. When they got a few games uncontested during their qualifying week, they dominated. I think they got into second place before they started getting contested again. So seeing them with the Kami split, which has been held down by Calculator's team, which didn't qualify, is looking really, really good for that team. I don't know how strong they are going to be and how consistent they are going to be end game, but right now that is one of the best drops on the map, which is claimed by a new team. So I'm really excited to see it. All right, now talking about our usual teams at their usual drop spots. I've done videos on this in the past, but in case you missed them, I do think right now coming into this, Macwood, Kanata, Bucky, and then Centered Edgy Commandment are two of the absolute favorites. They've got phenomenal drop spots, and they both have their drop spots uncontested and have this entire time. They have so much practice. Craggy has been nerfed quite considerably. The Harpoon quest glitch thing that was at Craggy has been taken out. If you don't know what that is, whenever Fish Stick spawned, he'd have a guaranteed quest that was harpoon an opponent for 200 gold, but it worked on teammates. So you'd walk up to Fish Sticks, each of you would get 200 gold. He's an upgrade. You get guaranteed epics, or you go and get the Kling sniper from the Flopper Island. So that was insane. That has been nerfed, but Craggy is still a really, really strong drop for this team. So I have high hopes for them. We have Centered Edgy Commandment at Misty. Misty is still my top 2 drop spot with Dirty Docks. They're just so strong. You get so much loot. You have good rotates with vehicles. You both have upgrade NPCs. It's just, they're insane drops. And when Centered Edgy Commandments team has been heavily utilizing that Dragon Shotgun in their ultimate low ground play, getting that almost guaranteed, because sometimes Condor, the NPC, sells legendary or epic. If it's epic, they buy it every time. If it's legendary, they don't, because they'd rather just get double epic upgrades for 2 teammates rather than having a legendary shotgun on 1. So makes sense overall. But honestly, that is looking like a very, very strong drop spot coming into this one for that team. Creo, Avery, Illist, they're still at Lazy Lake. We've seen what they can do when they don't have Riversan's team on top of them. They absolutely dominate. So they're looking incredibly strong coming out of that, as Riversan's team has actually moved over to Hunter's Haven. So they're close to each other. We could see some battles there for Storm Surge. We maybe see some emotional early game fights. I don't know, but that is looking incredibly strong for them. Finally getting to see Chap's team with uncontested Steamy or an uncontested drop in grand finals, I think is massive. I know Chap will have the composure and competitive experience to keep it together and lead his team in grand finals. How Dukes and Threats will hold up will be interesting. They've been improving so much as a team and as players this season, but Dukes and Threats haven't really seen themselves in the grand final situation with the pressure on as much. So I hope Chap can keep them together and see a really strong performance from them. Degen, Aged, and Skittles, one of my favorite picks going into FNCS. I think the most underrated team to go in to win it. I know people know them inside of NAE's competitive scene, but I think the kind of mainstream players in this game, the ones who aren't as competitively focused, don't understand just how good Degen, Aged, and Skittles are, and just how good they're doing out of their Orchard triple house split, because there is no way they get contested there. No one has even thought to try and contest it. No one really knows how to play that drop spot well, and they're the only team that's seen really good success out of it. So I have high hopes for them as well. We then of course have to talk about Clicks, Bizzle, and Booger out of Sweaty Sands. I mean, they've shown how good they can be. I've questioned a little bit, are they just having good days, or are they this consistent? Right now, they were first place in the first week of NA East FNCS, and then they got first place in their heat. So already they're coming off the back of 2 first places. They have a 100% first place rating when it comes to FNCS so far. So you really can't count them out in grand finals. I think the only reason reason why people and myself are a bit skeptical is because of Clix's kind of grand final curse. He just always seems to be going into grand finals with solid teams, solid drops, good consistency, and then things just don't really happen once in the grand finals. So gotta mention them, but we'll have to see how they go. We then obviously have Jack, Acorn, and Slacks over at Slurpy Swamps. We've seen how nuts they can be. We've seen them break point records in FNCS weeks. It was the easier heat, but dropping a global point record even in an easy heat is still insane. When they actually try, when they want to show up and do big things, we know how dominant they are. Slurpy Swamps is a great drop to do it out of, so they are very much up on my list to dominate as well. We got some other really big teams showing up into new drop spots or old drop spots. We have the Xset trio. They showed up big on the weekend. They managed to qualify. They popped off in 2 of their games especially. We now have the Xset guys, Night, Shark, and AV going into like what looks like their old split. It's kind of like that that bottom southwestern section of the map. They're getting the logjam. They're getting the kind of shanty town. They're going to get all the loot in that area. It looks like they've also claimed Rainbow Rentals, which is really big. You've got Aviv's team going Holy Hedges. I guess they're giving that up to them, which makes sense because they are a pretty scary team and they do need that loot to grab it. I'm not sure how the Weeping split is going to affect them because we do have Teo, Noob, and Teo, Chimp, and Tabney going into Weeping Woods, and I don't know if they're going to try and claim the Henchman House and the Scout Tower, which would have a big impact on Knight's team there as well because they get that little bit less loot, but it shouldn't affect them too much. We have Narwhal's team, which I know if you guys have seen the tweets have been a meme with me hating on Narwhal. I have very high hopes for them coming into this FNCS. They have uncontested retail, which looks very, very interesting from a team that I think could really surprise people with that drop spot. We have Cease's team going the middle of the map, which is always an interesting drop. There's not that much loot in the middle of the map, especially when you have XMB's team claiming Risky, also claiming that kind of area around that. I think they're going to try and also go for the, I don't know what the house is called. It's the house that has the NPC bounty in it, the pistol guy. I think they're trying to claim that as well, but I know Cease's team will also want to claim that, so we could see a little bit of a clash in that area. We also have Paper, Nosh, and Jamper going Coliseum. They're also not going to be too happy giving up too much loot in the center of the map, so that'll be a massive kind of Storm Surge fest. If any of those 3 teams fight each other, you know the other ones are going to be looking in for easy Storm Surge tags. If I didn't mention any teams, guys, it's no disrespect to them. It's no flame to them. It's just, I know that some of these drops might change. I wanted to get the big talking points out. I wanted to cover as much as I could. Obviously, like I said, I've linked the map in the description down below. So if you're like, hey, I really love, you know, Sid's team. He didn't talk about Sid's team much of Pleasant. Go check out the map. You can obviously figure out a fair bit for yourself. I will make an updated one of these if things massively change. But with only a few days out, most of these look like they're going to stay consistent. So I just wanted to do one big overview video right now because even if a few teams change, 95% of today's video will hopefully still be relevant. If you like this video and you want me to do them for the other regions, please chuck a like on it. Let me know in the comment section down below because I'm happy to do it. Obviously, I'll need to do way more research and I'm already reaching out to some of the analysts and some of the pros that follow the other regions better than me. NA East is the region that I get paid to follow day in, day out, week after week. So I'm always going to lead off with these because I just know all this off the top of my head. So yeah, if you guys want those, let me know because I do want to make them. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world to me. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.